This episode of the MLB Guardcast is sponsored by Sadnap Studios. Are you in need of assistance when it comes to digital arts, logo creation, website design, brand building, or designing merch? Then look no further than Sadnap Studios. The team at Sadnap Studios wants to help and make your dreams into reality. Everything is original and organically created, nothing AI. You can follow them and check out some of their incredible work on Instagram at sadnap_studios_art drop. Thanks again to the folks at Sadnap Studios. Go Guards. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is 2024, and that means that it is time for a new episode of the MLB Guardcast, episode number 22. I am Mike Vorhies. He is Bryan Shaw. Bryan, Happy New Year, good sir. How are you?
Happy New Year. Happy Groundhog Day. It is February. We are less than 2 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting, so I think it's time to check in on this team.
I couldn't agree with you more. Really quick, though, since you are a meteorologist extraordinaire, what can you tell me? Did the groundhog, whether it's Buckeye Chuck or Punxsutawney Phil or whatever groundhog
Buckeye
you
Chuck,
follow,
Punxsutawney Phil, the West Virginia groundhog, whatever his name is,
yeah,
they all are predicting early spring. And I'd also say, based on the actual meteorological trends, February and March should be mild. That doesn't mean we're done with snow. We're
not
it
only
always
is
snows in March.
Not only is Bryan Shaw an expert in Guardians, he is an expert in meteorology. I trust him when it comes to the weather forecast. So there you go, folks. Spring comes early. Well, the Guards have made some moves. Let's check in. Obviously, Bryan, you and I recorded back in November when the Guardians named Stephen Vogt as the new manager. And we were waiting to see what this team would do. They've made a few moves. Some that I will scratch my head about, but I'm sure that your reason will calm me down a little bit. So we'll see,
because I think there was an interesting trend, because as these things were happening, when you looked at them individually, they didn't necessarily make sense. But then when you looked at it as the sum of the parts and how it comes together with like the rest of the position group, some of them did make a little more sense.
Right. So let's start with a trade featuring Cal Quantrill. I cannot believe I butchered his name. That's how bad he was last year. I forgot how to say his name. Cal Quantrill dealt to the Colorado Rockies. We get 23-year-old catcher Cody Huff in return, a career .262 hitter. More of a depth piece, I would say. Cal Quantrill was 4-7.
He'll be in like Double-A for a little while, won't he?
At 23, I think he'll be at either single A or Double-A. That would
we won't see him for a while. That was more of a move. So Quantrill was due $6 to $8 million, I believe, in arbitration. That was going to be his number, and they ended up dealing him after they decided that they weren't going to give him that offer.
Right.
So they had designated him for assignment. That gives them time to make a deal, and then they ended up making a deal.
Yeah, I don't know if this was the best offer on the table, but we'll take it. We know Cal struggled quite a bit last year. Just didn't seem to have his confidence, didn't seem to have his control. A very terrible year. So, we appreciate his time here in Cleveland, but all good things must come to an end. Cal's in Colorado, so good luck pitching at Coors Field. The next trade, this one shook me a bit because when you text me about it, I couldn't believe it. So the Guardians traded Angel De Los Santos, reliever extraordinaire, Mr. Rule 5 draft that we picked up and was phenomenal in our pen. We traded him to the San Diego Padres for Scott Barlow. The name may sound familiar because before the Padres, he was with the Kansas City Royals. Very good reliever. Sub 3.5. Yep. Sub 3.5 ERA. He's got 56 career saves. You like this move?
I do. Let's go over a couple more moves because then I think this move makes a little more sense, and I'll break it down here in a minute. But let's keep going.
All right, the next one, a head scratcher for sure, and I'll explain why in a minute. the Guardians trade Cody Morris, right-handed pitcher. We trade him to the Bronx, to the New York Yankees, and we receive Estevan Florial, 26 years old. He was very talented, but didn't have a spot in the Yankees rotation of outfielders. And just, I think this guy really needed a change of scenery.
Change of scenery. His profile is a little bit like Oscar Gonzalez's, who we then let go. I believe prior to that move, he actually goes to the Yankees very briefly, and then they cut him.
Yep, the Yankees have actually, he has been released. He is still he is a free agent at this time.
Yeah, so Florial has a little bit better plate discipline, but his makeup is very much. He had a 130 WRC plus last year in AAA with 28 home runs. He has power.
So he's got power,
but he's older. He hasn't had a lot of time in the major leagues. He can also play center field.
He can.
It looks like he's going to have an opportunity here.
We've got two guys that currently play center field. That's Stephen Kwan and Miles Straw, which we know Miles had a very down year last year. So we joked, you and I, Brian, about who would play center field. But this is a trade I was a little curious with because of the depth we need for pitching. It seems like Cody Morris was a guy that could potentially be a good pitcher. Well, we trade him to the Yankees.
You're only as good as your depth if you're available, and Cody Morris has not been available. And I think that was this was one of those trades where both teams are about to unload a guy and maybe for nothing, and then they call each other and say, hey, I got this guy that we don't really want anymore, and they go, okay, I got this guy I don't really want anymore, and let's make a swap and see if one of them can catch lightning.
Change of scenery may do well. Now, the funniest trade I've seen that the Guardians have made in quite some time revolves around catcher Christian Bethancourt. You may say, who is that? We claimed him off waivers on November the 6th. We then trade him less than a month later to the Miami Marlins for cash. Why did we make that deal, Bryan Shaw? Because guess who's back? Hedgie has returned to the Cleveland Guardians. The team signed Austin Hedges. He's back to be our number 2 catcher behind Bo Naylor. This is a head scratcher on the offensive side because he's not going to give you much offensively. But when it comes to defense, there's probably nobody better. And as a morale guy, a locker room guy, everyone spoke so highly of Austin Hedges. So we're glad that he's back.
So this is a situation where I think we got to look at the sum of the parts and like kind of how this all went down. So they were going to move on from Cam Gallagher. You have Bo Naylor as your number 1 catcher.
Yep.
So they let go of Cam Gallagher. They claimed Bettencourt off of waivers. So they made a waiver claim for him.
Yep.
And he was basically going to be your backup in case you didn't sign Austin Hedges. You sign Austin Hedges, you move on from Bettencourt. The difference is from this year with Hedges, or this coming year, compared to 2022, is Hedges isn't your starter now. No. He's your backup. And the talk with Bo Naylor hasn't been his offense. It's managing the pitchers, and we've seen he's got an incredible arm, but I think Hedges is going to be a really good mentor for him, and we're not expecting Hedges to play 120 games this year or 100 games this year. He's going to play hopefully less than 50, and then that's fine. That's a difference from 2 years ago where Hedges was expected to be your near everyday catcher.
Right. The team had signed Mike Zunino. That experiment failed. Austin Hedges then thrust into the starting role. But let's be honest, Hedges got some hardware now. He's a World Series champion. So I will take that in the locker room, and let's hope that it rubs off and gets the Guardians to that World Series.
And there was a lot of talk about that his leadership was missed last year, and a lot of guys were really excited to have him back. I was actually at batting practice when Hedges came back for because he was with the Rangers, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So when the Rangers were in town, and the hugs that were shared with Straw and Quan and those guys, I mean, they definitely really missed him.
Yeah, he's a key guy. Everybody talks so highly. You don't really hear a negative thing spoken about Austin Hedges, but guess what? He's back. Tito may be gone, but we have Hedgie, so that'll be good. Moving on, the Guardians signed another pitcher. They signed right-handed pitcher Ben Lively, formerly of the Cincinnati Reds. He's 8-17 overall in his career with a 5.05 ERA. Brian, you see him more as a depth piece, maybe a sixth starter, so to speak.
Yeah, so I think you can couple this with, well, and another piece too. So, do we have any more major league?
The Guardians made a move in the Rule 5 draft
Okay, yes.
that everybody
Let's keep going. We'll get to the pitching staff here in a minute.
Yes.
Keep
so
going.
the team picked up first baseman Davison De Los Santos from the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's 20 years old, a career 284 hitter with 50 home runs and 204 RBIs. I really like this move.
So I actually don't.
Really? Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
And I'll explain why later. But I don't like this move. I don't think he's going to make the team because with the Rule 5, he has to be on the roster, like the full
Correct.
roster. Otherwise, we have to give him back. They could trade for him and get his rights and then option him to AAA. I like his power. I like his makeup. I would like him in the system in the minor leagues. I don't like him as a major league player, and I don't see where he fits right now. He has power, but he's only 20 years old.
Yeah.
And
I think
they have
he
a
could
roster
be,
crunch as it is. So how are you going to stick a 20-year-old on this team?
I think he was picked up because I think there's something else that's going to happen. I firmly believe that this front office is doing what makes sense. This guy has incredible numbers from a metric standpoint, obviously only being 20 years old with no major league experience. Could be one of those things where they pick him up and they're going to put him in a deal because somebody may want to take a flyer on him. I don't know if I want to give up a 40-man roster spot for him because if he's not on the 40-man, we have to send him back. And
if he's not on the main roster, we have to send him
he
back.
has to be on the 26-man.
He has to make the major league team. That's what I mean.
Geez. Yeah,
and he's we can get into this now. So Kyle Manzardo is not on the 40-man roster. He's the player that you got in the trade for Aaron Savali. He is your future first baseman, where he would split time with Josh Naylor, and then Josh Naylor would play more DH because right now the team doesn't have a DH. So here's my problem with the De Los Santos move. De Los Santos plays third base and first base. So are you telling me if De Los Santos makes the team and Manzardo doesn't, are you seriously telling me that De Los Santos is better than Manzardo? I highly doubt that. He's significantly younger. He significantly has less experience. And if they try to play service time manipulation games with Manzardo and De Los Santos makes the team, if they pull that nonsense about like, well, we want Kyle Manzardo to start off hot in AAA in April and May, and the Cleveland cold weather and guys don't start off well, and they use those excuses for Manzardo, but they don't use those excuses for De Los Santos. Like that it just doesn't jive.
Well, and I think too, spring training hasn't happened yet, and I think he has to make the roster out of spring training. There is a very high probability that this team makes a trade. And I think De Los Santos could be included in that deal to a team that may have a roster spot free, unlike us, who is 40-man maxed out, and
if
we have infielders galore.
And if you're asking, well, why would Cleveland do that? That actually happened to Cleveland in the previous Rule 5 draft. I think it was Tampa Bay. They Rule 5 picked one of our guys and then traded him later.
Yeah. It happens.
It was one of our pitchers. So, yeah, it does happen. All right, so keep going.
That's all right. So now we get into the fun part where the invitations to spring training. You don't get to make the roster yet. You get a minor league deal with an invitation to spring training. And the Guardians have handed out a few so to speak, golden tickets, and we'll see who gets to come in to spring training. I'm going to save the best for last. We're going to start with Jaime Barria. He's a right-handed pitcher, formerly of the Angels. I think he could potentially make this team as a depth piece. As we all know, injuries happen. It crushed us last year with our pitching. So Jaime Barria could be a name to watch. You have a reliever in Adam Aller, who was with the A's. I think this is more or less a favor from Stephen Vogt because they're friends, because this guy has a 10 ERA in 19 innings. He's been absolutely shelled.
Yeah,
So
most of these guys are going to be, AAA players. Most of them are just to fill out the roster or, fill out some bodies in spring training. I'd say of the two that are left that of note is it Bitey?
Tyler
Beatty.
Tyler Beatty, 7-16 overall in his career. Former prospect of the Giants. He has a career 534 earned run average. He pitched in Japan last year and really turned his numbers around. Had a sub 4 ERA. Looked really good. So this is an interesting one for me.
And he added a pitch. He added a sweeper, I believe. It was the guys over on Locked On that had mentioned that. That he had added a sweeper pitch.
Hey,
so he's kind of another one of those, a little bit like Florial, where he was a highly touted prospect and just hasn't realized his potential yet. And so, all right, put him in the pitching factory. Let's see what we can do with him.
We may be able to turn him around. Who knows? You've got another reliever, Tyler Zuber, formerly of the Royals. We signed him to a spring training invite. Dom Nunez, a catcher, basically catching depth, maybe. I don't know if he'll make the team. Left-handed pitcher Anthony Banda, formerly of the Devil Rays, the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Could be a lefty pitcher because right now the Guardians have one left-handed pitcher on their 40-man roster, and that is Sam Henches. The other lefty in the minor league system is Tim Herron. So could potentially Banda make an appearance. He's 7-6 in his career. I mean, sub 6 ERA, so that's not good. You never know. You could need a lefty, but the best signing of them all, a homecoming, so to speak. Carlos Cookie Carrasco has been signed by the Cleveland Guardians, minor league deal with an invitation to spring training. This guy, welcome back, Cookie. This has all the possibilities of a great movie. I mean, this is what a storyline if he makes this team.
Yeah, it's really nice to see him come back. I mean, Carrasco is going to be, I think, 37. His stuff was not great with the Mets, but it could be one of those situations like with Carlos Santana when he went to the Phillies and he just really wasn't the same. And he comes home and then we rejuvenate him a little bit. But here's the thing. And here's why I wanted to talk about the sum of the parts when it comes to the pitching. And we don't need Carrasco to be a go 5 innings starter anymore. Nope. Whoever gets that role, which would have been the role of Cal Quantrill, and this is why they traded him because he didn't have a good season last year. You have your 5 starting rotation players. You'll need some depth pieces. You'll need some spot starts. You always do. The doubleheader starts, those kinds of things. You need long relievers. So that is going to be battled out with Barria, with Lively, with Carrasco, and you still have Xavier Curry. So you have guys that can fill that role. And so basically what they did was they took that $8 million that they were going to give Cal Quantrill. They traded him. Ben Lively's getting less than $1 million. Carrasco's going to get $2 million if he makes the team. They basically took that money and reallocated it and gave it to Scott Barlow when they made that trade.
Yeah.
And so then what you did was you got players like, let's take Lively, for example. A lot of people didn't like that move, but his advanced stats were better than Cal Quantrill's last season in terms of, like hit rates and those kinds of things. Like if you look at his baseball savant page and you compare it to Cal Quantrill's, his was better. So then you've also upgraded your eighth inning role because Barlow is not going to be asked to close. Maybe sometimes so that you don't overuse
Well, you
Class
remember
A.
Clase blew how many saves last year?
Yeah,
12.
because
So
he led the in appearances. He led Major League
yeah,
Baseball in appearances.
having that
And
depth is going to be quite nice.
and also then what that does is putting Barlow in the eighth inning role where he should be plenty comfortable. Trevor Stephan then moves to 7 and he's not the eighth. And that was the other part of it. How many guys were we rotating through that eighth inning spot and none of them were
Angel
able to
De
seize
Los
it?
Santos was used quite a bit in
Yeah,
that
De
eighth
Los
inning role
Santos,
last year. Yeah.
Karinchak.
Hey, now Karinchak can pitch the 6th, and you don't have to worry about stress. And he's finally had another year to figure out how to throw a pitch, the time clock. Now we only need a starter to go 5 innings, Brian. This could actually work
Well, that's what
really
I
well.
mean. And so yeah, so if you have a starter go 5 innings and you have, Henches, Stephan, Barlow, Clase, it's a really nice back end of the bullpen.
We're forgetting someone, and his name just escaped me.
Are you thinking of
Oh,
Eli Morgan?
I am thinking of Mr. Eli Morgan. Thank you. I don't know how I forgot. We've got options now in the bullpen to where we don't have to tax these guys.
Well, that's what I mean.
Beautiful.
And not
Beautiful.
just tax them, but the pressure situations,
Yeah.
because by putting Barlow there, and all you had to do was reallocate some money, and you have several options where, because like I said, Quantrill was going to be your 6th starter, long relief guy. He wasn't going to make the 5-man rotation. So now you have those options with Carrasco, Lively, and maybe even some young guys too, like Joey Cantillo. You mentioned lefties. He could be another one of those guys that could fill that role. So you have options there, and you didn't need to allocate $8 million or $6 million or whatever it was to that position.
Now my question becomes: you talk about allocating money, Brian. Do we have any money left? Because I look at our team, and I notice that there's a big gap in power. We still don't have that power bat. And I know that you had come out with an article. You posted an absolutely amazing article. And it was Locked on the Guardians, correct?
No, this was on Covering the Corner.
Covering the Corner, that's what it is. I'm sorry.
And it's called Chris Antonetti Has a Pattern. If you wanted to check that out, I did post it on all my socials and I got a lot of good feedback. So this is a good opportunity to talk about the Bally situation. So Bally Sports was in bankruptcy, and they did end up paying the Guardians their full amount from last year, which was $55 million, but they wanted to get out of this year's deal. So it looks like they were going to go bankrupt. Looks like Major League Baseball was going to go on their own. Amazon swoops in, gives them a bunch of money. Amazon's going to take over streaming. However, that didn't include the Twins, the Guardians, and
the Diamondbacks,
I believe, because they don't have the streaming rights. And then they renegotiated a lower rate for those 3 teams. It was going to be 15% less. So 15%, 85% of 60 million is 51 million. And that deal just got basically finalized today.
It did.
So what that means is the Guardians, for their TV money, are only getting $4 million less than they did last year. Now, the payroll is about the same as it was last year. But, there was allegedly an infusion of money from ticket sales and all those things. I still feel like they need to make an outfield move. I know they have, they put in Florial. You have Ramon Laureano and Will Brennan who could platoon. You basically have 5 guys.
By the way, it is Will Brennan's birthday today. Shout out Will Brennan. Happy birthday, sir.
Will Brennan. You do have 5 guys right now. And we had already talked about the roster crunch and where are you going to fit Manzardo and where are you going to fit De Los Santos in this position player field. However, when I was looking at Antonetti's pattern since he has been president, more often than not, they sign guys to 1-year deals for less than $10 million. If you look at all the free agents, and I listed them all out, there are all these 1-year deals and they're less than $10 million. And if it's a different deal, like with now I'm blanking on names.
Josh Bell had a 2-year deal.
Josh Bell was a 2-year, and then also when Santana left, we got a first baseman. It was Yonder Alonso.
Yonder Alonso. Oh yes.
So he
I
was a
forgot
2-year
about him.
deal, but then they
Okay.
traded him after one season.
Right.
Josh Bell, 2-year deal, traded him after half of a season.
Right.
Even Edwin Encarnacion, which is like the complete outlier in this situation,
Right.
he only stayed on for 2 years, and that was coming after a World Series appearance. So that one, I basically took like, okay, that's the outlier here.
Right.
But anyway, then I identified 4 guys who fits this bill, who could be on a 1-year deal, who's going to help this team, and who can hit some home runs. And I identified 4 guys, and they're all still available.
Yeah. I added one name to your list, but I'll let you go through your 4 and I'll throw my 5th in when you're done.
So you have Tommy Pham. He can play the either the corner outfield spots.
And he's fast. He steals bases.
You
Tommy
have
Pham kind of fits that Guardians image. He can hit, he can run, he's good defensively. He hits lefties well.
He may be a little cuckoo. So
you said it. I didn't. I was going to let it go, but you could
argue, do you put that guy in this young locker room, so on and so forth, whatever.
Right.
Adam Duvall's another one.
Ooh, this one I like.
He can also play center field. He can also play first base. So he has options, and all that does is by bringing in somebody like him, he would be projected to hit 25 home runs this season with a 700 OPS. He's not the type that hits, for a big average. I think he was like 240, 250 last season, but fine. We don't have anybody who can hit basically over 10 home runs on this team.
Except Jose. In the outfield? Yeah.
So Duvall's another one. And then that takes away at bats from Miles Straw. Miles Straw could be your defensive replacement.
Yep.
Adam Grishik is another one.
Randall
Grishik. Sorry, Randall Grishik.
No, you're good.
Yes. 17 home runs projected to hit this season.
Yeah, and he's good defensively. So
yeah, Adam Duvall. That's where I got
Adam Duvall is number 1 on my list.
Yes.
That one makes a ton of sense.
And then if he still wants to play outfield, I know he's primarily an infielder, but 2-hit Witt has always been one of my favorite players.
Not a power guy, but he's extremely versatile.
Not a power guy.
Plays all over the field. Solid contact, a 284 career average. He plays great defense. I would take 2-hit Witt any day of the week.
Yes, he's only projected it with 10 home runs from Fangraphs for this season, so he was on the lower end.
What's his projected batting average, though? It's going to be between 280 and 300.
They think he's fallen off. They only project him at a 681 OPS.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. They're projecting that he has seen his better days, and that's could be why he's not signed yet. No, but anyway, all those guys can be had, especially the closer we get to spring training. All those guys, you're going to tell me those guys couldn't be had for $6 million, $7 million right now?
I would give Adam Duvall 1 year, $10 million. You gave it to Zunino and he failed miserably.
Yeah.
Why can't you give 10 million to Duvall and say, we need a power bat? But there's one name, Brian, that you forgot. And he's another fan favorite. And you talked about not having a DH. This guy could play that DH role and the fans love him. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about none other than Slamtana himself, Carlos Santana. Can we get another reunion? Come on, that'd be fitting. Carrasco
that would be nice.
And Santana.
So I thought about that later, especially as it continued to get closer to spring training. But I didn't mention him because he wasn't an outfielder. That's why he wasn't initially part. But if you want a stopgap in the DH first base role to partner with Naylor until Manzardo's ready, that's where you go.
Santana's great
you don't
defensively.
Put 20-year-old De Los Santos out there.
No.
But that's where you go with that position. And he brings back the power and his walk rate and all those things.
Yeah.
And so this is then though where, then you also worry about like, okay, as we get into the nitty-gritties of the roster, is Gabriel Arias going to be your everyday shortstop starting off? Okay, well, what do you do with Brian Rocchio? What do you do with
Yeah.
Tyler Freeman? There's a lot of questions that really have to be answered, and they haven't answered any of those big questions. All the things that we mentioned, this is all kind of bottom of the roster shuffling. They're nice moves that are probably going to overall be helpful. And I also mentioned in my article with Covering the Corner that like these invite to spring training guys, I listed a whole slew of them. A lot of them end up making a big impact. I'm going to just rattle off some of these guys. Marlon Byrd, Austin Jackson, Melky Cabrera, Rajay Davis his second time, Mike Freeman, Carlos Gonzalez, Tyler Clippard, Blake Parker, and De Los Santos, who was an invite to spring training, and we just traded him.
Rest in peace, Carlos Gonzalez. That was my guy. If you remember way back on the old pod name, me and Brent, all the time, Brent would tease me that I had a man crush on Carlos Gonzalez. I really thought this guy was going to turn the Indians at the time around.
I thought that was going to be a nice move too. But my point is that these spring training invites, these guys do make impacts, or they can make impacts. So don't brush those off. And maybe Randall Grisham will take a spring training invite with a deal like Carrasco, where if you make this team, you'll get $5 million.
I guarantee any one of those names we listed would take a spring deal if it meant they could make more money if they make the team. Prove it, right? That's kind of where we're at. Some guys, unfortunately, they get that way towards the end of their career where it's a prove it deal. And we tried it with Zunino, it failed. We tried it with Josh Bell, didn't go well, but we traded him and we got out from under it. So there's also good news, Brian. I have more good news really quick. For those that didn't see it, your Cleveland Guardians actually have the number 1 pick coming up in the July MLB draft. It'll be in Arlington, Texas. We're going to look through some of these pick options. We'll talk about them as we get closer to that July draft. But Brian, we got a number 1 pick.
That is pretty amazing.
We could really get somebody good.
You know, I did say that it was Gilbert's son with the bow tie, bringing back the good luck for the number 1 pick.
Nick Gilbert, yes.
Because that was thanks to the lottery. Because obviously, you know, we finished in 3rd place, and, you know, I don't know where we would have been slotted, maybe 10th.
Yeah. We were slotted, I think 7 to 12 is where they said we would potentially pick. And then for us to walk away with that number 1 pick, it reminded me of the Cavs days when we got Kyrie, when we got LeBron. Like, wow, this could really turn it around for the Guardians, get some more depth.
Yeah,
because there's so many players that could be had right now.
Even Antonetti was surprised and said that they had to change their scouting and look at some of these other guys. Now, the thing is this is baseball, and at minimum, maybe at the soonest, we'll see this guy at the end of 2026.
Maybe, yeah.
But so that's a long time away. So, you know, we want to compete sooner than that. And this division is wide open. And the Twins have butchered their roster. The White Sox have just fallen off.
Yeah.
The Royals have made a couple of moves. Actually, the team I'm most afraid of is, I think, the Tigers are going to make a run at the top of this division.
And they can. They absolutely can. But we play, I hate to say it, and I know I'm going to take some grief for this, we do play in the weakest division in baseball.
Oh, absolutely. I think
the Guardians
86,
have a chance.
87 wins could win this division. And that's again, an annoying part for me, why we haven't gotten an outfielder that is obviously better than Estevan Florial and Miles Straw. I mean,
guess what?
Those guys are
2 weeks.
Yeah, Florial is it's a dice roll. Like it's a lottery ticket, and if you can get something out of him, great. But with this upcoming season, there's a lot of, if this goes right, and this goes right, and this goes right, and this goes right, and this guy and Brennan steps up, and Arias, you know, can hit.
We haven't even talked about George Valera. We haven't talked about our other infielder that they moved to the outfield over in winter ball. I can't think of his name.
Rodriguez?
No, the infielder. He was a shortstop with Gabriel Arias, Tyler Freeman.
Oh,
They've
yes.
moved him to
Tyler
the
Freeman.
outfield
Tyler
to try
Freeman
to give
is
him
getting
some outfield work.
he is
So,
getting outfield work. Yeah.
so Brian, we got spring training right around the corner. We cannot wait to dive in. Where can they find you on social media?
I'm at Weathershaw, WXSHAW on Twitter, Bryan Shaw on Facebook, on Instagram, also Bryan Shaw, but Instagram is more just photos of me doing random things sometimes.
There you go. There you go.
How about you, Mike?
You can find me on X and Facebook at Mike Vorhies. Guys, we're on YouTube. Search MLB Guardcast. You can see our beautiful smiling faces. If you have listened to us and you have always been curious, wonder what these guys look like. Now's your chance. Hop on YouTube. We'll include the link when we post this podcast to Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere podcasts are available. Find us on X at the MLB Guardcast, or we are Guardcast MLB.
Guardcast MLB on X. Yes, we had to go. We had to go backwards.
Had to, but Brian, fun as always. Go Guards. Let's do this. Fun. We're getting ready. The season's coming.
Spring's
the weather's
here.
changing.
There's a lot to sort out. There's a lot to be interested
It's okay.
in. Is it going to go well? Who knows? But there's a lot that'll actually be interesting.
Yeah. Until then, folks, be safe. We'll see you next time. Go Guards.
Take care.